Welcome to the Just AI podcast. I'm Paige Lord. I'm your host, and I'm here to share with you the top AI, responsible AI, and AI policy news of the week. This is episode 2, and we're talking about uncertain times, TikTok, a new administration, and Brad Pitt AI scams, and a little bit of everything in between. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I was able to work on podcast and automating the processes for my newsletter and my podcast, which was really interesting work. And shout out to my husband who helped me work through some of the automation processes. One thing I discovered this weekend is my love for Inauguration. And I've always really admired her, but I've been really deep in business building mode and practical application of what that looks like. And so sometimes I've just needed a little bit of a break, and I don't want to watch anything too intense, and I don't want my brain to just be overwhelmed by anything else. So I've just been putting on Inauguration cooking videos, which has been awesome. And so shout out to the Barefoot Contessa. Her story is really interesting too. So if you're interested in things that are not artificial intelligence, if you're interested in learning about Inauguration, I definitely recommend taking a look at her story because she is very interesting. And I think she just wrote a book, so I'm definitely going to get that. But that was a little bit of my weekend. It was 95% working on my business, and 5% of it was watching Inauguration videos. The inauguration has already happened, and so we have a new administration in the White House. That's some of the hot news off the top here, is that the new administration / familiar administration, because Donald Trump is back in the White House. And it was also Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 20th. And so I wanted to share a quote that has long informed my desire to care for the world, and part of my motivation for being in the world of responsible AI in general. And the quote from Martin Luther King is, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." And I think about this quote often. This is one that has long been a part of the way I consider the world and just the interconnectedness of us all. And I think that it is just as true, now as it was when he made this statement, which was during kind of the beginning, first 10, 15 years of the space age. And I think in the age of AI, this is just as relevant and applicable because we are all interconnected, and what affects one affects all. And how we handle these variety of situations that have to do with safety and trust and bias and security and transparency and all of these things, nefarious uses of AI and policy, all of these things have the ability to affect all of us. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to some of our notable news. And today I wanted to talk about the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report that just came out. This is their 5th annual Future of Jobs report. And the timing is in line with the World Economic Forum, which is actually taking place right now as you're listening to this, probably January 20th through 24th in Davos. And their theme this year is collaboration for the intelligent age. I've never been to the World Economic Forum, but every year I like to follow up and see what's going on there and the types of events that they've held. And usually in Davos, these larger companies will just sort of paint the town with their advertisements and with their company logos and all of these things. It's definitely the type of event that I would love to attend in the future if I had the opportunity to, because there's such a moment for learning about what's coming and getting different perspectives on what's coming and a global perspective, which I think is very important. But that is currently happening, and they shared their 5th annual Future of Jobs report. So the Future of Jobs report takes a look at the evolving technological, societal, and economic trends with the broader goal of tracking and understanding how these trends are going to shape and change jobs in the future, and how we can prepare ourselves and prepare people for those transitions. This report is also incredibly important for countries who are trying to figure out how they can look into the future in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and make changes in how they're operating in their country in order to be able to prepare their country for the resilience that they need, provide the resources, provide the skilling that they need to be able to be resilient to these changes in the future. AI was a huge theme. That's probably unsurprising. And the report is 290 pages long, so I'm not going to dive into the whole thing here, but here, I wanted to share a couple of the things that were kind of caught my attention. One is, and that was the most shocking item to me, is that on average, workers can expect 2/5 or 39% of their existing skills to be transformed or become outdated between 2025 and 2030. That's a 5-year period, 30. That is a huge deal. And I think that it's something that we need to be paying attention to. Another item of note is that AI-related skills are in high demand. And they say, quote, broadening digital access is expected to be the most transformative trend. both across technology-related trends and overall, with 60% of employers expecting it will transform their businesses by 2030. So broadening digital access will be transforming businesses. 60% of employers expect that it will transform their business by 2030. Advancements in technology, particularly AI and information processing, robotics and automation, and energy generation, storage and distribution are also expected to be transformative. And then they go on to say that these trends are expected to have a divergent effect on jobs, driving both the fastest growing and the fastest declining roles, fueling demand for technology-related skills, including AI and big data, networks and cybersecurity, and technological literacy, which are anticipated to be the top 3 fastest growing skills. So I want to make sure that you catch that AI and big data, networks and cybersecurity, and technological literacy are anticipated to be the top 3 fastest growing skills. So they also say, that the workforce is changing rapidly. Half of employers plan to reorient their business in response to AI. 2/3 plan to hire talent with specific AI skills, while 40% anticipate reducing their workforce where AI can automate tasks. What does this mean for you? What does this mean for me? And I really took some time this week to think about that. The first one is that I know there are people out there who are afraid of change. If you're not already an early adopter of technology, it can feel really overwhelming to become an early adopter of technology. So I would recommend tackling your fear around change. Take some courses. People are offering all kinds of courses online right now, not just about the introduction to artificial intelligence, but about how to use AI to benefit your life, how to use AI in your business, and understanding how your skills can be enhanced by AI is really important, and then leaning into that. And if you don't know where to start, find somebody. Go on LinkedIn, find somebody who's having this conversation. Get 30 minutes of their time, ask them some questions. And if you're somebody who feels really confident in AI right now, offer to be there for people who are struggling with that fear of change. You can even feed the report into ChatGPT, feed your resume into it, feed your skills into it, put your career goals in there, and then see if ChatGPT or Claude can come out with you on the other side with some kind of a recommendation for what you can do to enhance your skills. Ask it to pull direct links for you to different classes and certifications or webinars that you should watch to enhance your skills. That's a way that you can use AI to get ahead of what's happening with AI. And moving on to the next bit of news is talking about Park Aerospace Corp. So this is a company that develops and manufactures advanced composite materials for the aerospace industry. Why am I talking about them? Because they sent out AI-generated transcriptions of their Q3 investor conference call. So they had their Q3 investor conference call. They used AI, as many companies do, to get the transcription. And then instead of sending out like a pre-read press release or, the bullet points that their PR team might have put together, they didn't do that. They used AI-generated transcriptions and then sent those things out to press. And there was a misinterpretation in there where instead of the word requalification, AI used the word recall, which was printed in several publications, and it created some reputational damage for Park Aerospace Corp and for its suppliers because recalls are such a serious deal. If you are a supplier and you have a recall, that's a huge deal. If you are a company and you have a recall, that's a huge deal, especially if you're in the aerospace industry or other industries like it. And so I think it's just another reminder, if you own a business, if you're in a business, that you need to be really having a clear line of when you use AI created materials or AI augmented materials to share out to the public. So something for everybody to be thinking about. And then the third thing in our sort of notable news section is about Mira Murati. And if you have not heard of Mira Murati, she was the former CTO of OpenAI. And then when Sam Altman was ousted for that 2-week period, or 1-week period, she was temporarily the CEO of the company. So very high up in OpenAI, a big influence in OpenAI, but she left in 2024. She said that she was going to be starting something on her own. She also said that she was going to be taking some time to just be, which I think is very important, especially after you've put so much into building a company like OpenAI and the amount that she was dealing with, with the ouster and then Sam Altman coming back and the board and everything. So she is starting her own venture. So good for her. And she's been able to get researchers and engineers from OpenAI, Character AI, and Google DeepMind. So she's pulling in some heavyweight AI folks. And her latest hire is the former head of special projects at OpenAI. His name is Jonathan Lockman. Now, her venture doesn't have a name yet, but it's rumored that she's leading a team on the exploration of artificial general intelligence. And the reason I wanted to put this in the notable news is because she's one to watch. And women are so unbelievably underrepresented, not only in like C-level roles in general, but in the world of artificial intelligence. So very excited to see what happens with her team, but she is pulling in some incredible people to her team. And my eyes are on Mira. I want to see what she's building, and I want to cheer for her when she launches what she's launching. Now diving into the content that is in the newsletter, we always start the newsletter with the quick hits. So here are 3 articles that I think you should take a look at this week that I'm not going to dive into. One is called Understanding the Impact of Human AI Interaction on Discrimination. That's coming from the European Commission. TikTok is one step closer to being banned in the US. That's coming from CNN. And the world's first AI chatbot, Eliza, has finally been resurrected after decades. That's coming from New Scientist. And then also just a note on the TikTok stuff. I don't know. I'm recording this before, the 19th. The 19th is when the TikTok ban is supposed to go into effect. So by the time you listen to this, it will have already gone into effect. And there was a lot of commentary about, whether or not the Trump administration was going to quote unquote save TikTok. I don't see how it could happen, but it'll be interesting to see if that is the first priority when he gets into office. And we may already know. So this might be outdated news already. All right, diving into the responsible AI news of the week. Anthropic has achieved the ISO 42001 certification for responsible AI. What the heck is that? That's a great question. So this certification provides a framework for managing AI systems responsibly and ethically, ensuring transparency, accountability, and risk management. And this is for organizations of any size or industry, and it covers all AI-related activities, including research, development, deployment, and monitoring. So this certification is awarded to companies who go through an incredibly rigorous process where they are audited, where they have to do a comprehensive review of all of their AI technology, where they have to make sure that they have safety put into place. They have to have a certain level of practices in place and processes and systems and governance, all of that. And it is incredibly rigorous. This is not a small thing. This is not something that a company could do overnight. And so they have worked toward this, and they're one of the first companies, one of the first leading AI companies to actually earn the ISO/IEC 42001 2023 certification. So a huge accomplishment for Anthropic, and kudos to them for actually doing that. This is a really big deal for a lot of reasons. Number one is that they don't just get the certification and walk away. They are actually subject to random audits throughout time. In order for them to keep their certification, the organization, the ISO, has to go in and conduct audits to make sure that those systems are still running the way that they're supposed to be running. So this is a continuous commitment from Anthropic. And I think this is a really big deal because right now we're seeing corporations who are pulling back on their DEI efforts. We're seeing them pulling back on their sustainability commitments. We're seeing them pulling back on safety commitments. What we're seeing from Anthropic is that they are continuing forward with what they have said from the beginning, which is that they want to be a company that builds safe artificial intelligence. And this is just another feather in their cap saying that when they said that, they stood on business and they meant it. Kudos to them for getting this certification, and congratulations to Anthropic. All right, the next thing, this is a little bit scandalous. It's kind of like a gossipy one. There's a woman in France who lost nearly $1 million through a scam where individuals used AI photos of Brad Pitt to con her into believing that she was in a relationship with Brad Pitt and she had to give him money for surgeries. I know it sounds crazy. The way that they kind of got into this woman's life in the first place is that a woman posing as Brad Pitt's mom reached out to this gal in France and said, I think that my son could use someone like you. And then all of a sudden she was quote unquote talking to Brad Pitt, and he had all of these AI generated photos of him. And so this is just a really sad story. And there were a lot of people online who were, ridiculed this woman and made fun of this woman and how could she be so foolish and all of these things. But she even admitted that she, is less of a social media user. She's a little bit more vulnerable. She was in the middle of a really challenging divorce, so she was emotionally vulnerable. And these individuals took advantage of that. And even when her daughter kind of shared with her, hey, these are scammers, she still was so wrapped up in this that she genuinely thought that it was Brad Pitt. The French authorities are investigating this. They're trying to recover the funds for her. This is just a sign, I think, for you to have a conversation with the people in your life who may not be aware of these types of scams. Even if they're on social media, have a conversation. If you have elderly parents, have a conversation with them as well, because, scamming is becoming more sophisticated, and it's worth having a 30-second or 5-minute conversation rather than having to deal with the cleanup of somebody losing almost $1 million, which is just wild to me. Okay, next up is that Apple is suspending its AI-generated news service until further notice. So the last time we reported on this, they were saying, hey, we're going to make improvements to this news service. And the reason they said they were going to do that is because their Apple Intelligence, which is available on certain devices, were basically taking the news headlines that were in Apple News and they were pulling together AI-generated notifications about these news updates. Fine, except for their updates were false in a lot of cases and dangerously false in a lot of cases. And so one case is that it, made commentary about somebody's sexuality that wasn't true, as somebody who's very famous in the tennis world. The second one is that they had said that Luigi Mangione had committed suicide. And so that was at the height of the sort of UHG and right when he was being arrested and all of that. And so there's a lot of reasons why this is a massive issue for Apple. The first one is that AI-driven misinformation undermines trust in journalism. So in a time when people are already not trusting journalism, let's say they trust the news network that they're getting the news from with Apple News, then they have a second layer that they have to go through to see if the information they're getting is correct. So that undermines the trust in journalism. It undermines the trust in Apple, which normally puts out really amazing products. And then this also shows the dangers of rushing AI-powered tools to market. Now, I don't know what the time frame was between when Apple decided they were going to have this feature and when they released this feature. The general public is not usually privy to that information. But I know that if they had run proper safety checks, if they had given it a proper amount of time, that it is unlikely that it would be making these types of egregious errors. And this is part of responsible AI as well. And I like to tell people this as somebody I'm in product marketing at GitHub, and every bit of getting AI to market is a part of responsible AI. It's not just the building. It's not just the testing. It's not just the way something is designed. How you take that product to market, how that product performs in market, the time frame that you have, all of those things are a part of responsible AI, because you can build something that's totally safe from an AI perspective and then have a marketing campaign that's totally irresponsible. If it is an AI product, there should be a responsible AI process, period. And it seems like there are a couple of ways that Apple missed the mark here. So they're recalling that feature until further notice. They haven't put a date on it, and hopefully they will conduct a number of tests. This is very similar to the situation with Google and Gemini. When they launched Gemini and then they were having challenges with the generative AI art, and they had to recall that in February of last year, and it didn't come back out on market until August. So it took them a very long time, 7 months, I think, to make the adjustments that they needed to make to put that back out on the market. So yeah, just another example of why we need to make sure that we are prioritizing responsible AI in every single part of building, deploying, marketing, using artificial intelligence. All right, and this is a little promotion break. So many of you know that I just kicked off my business, Just AI, a couple of months ago, and part of my business is this podcast. And some of the questions that I get from people who are like, I'm not really in the AI space, or I'm not your target customer for your business. How can I support you? And the best way to support people and their small businesses is to engage with the content that they're putting out in the world. So if you are looking for a way to support Just AI, if you wouldn't mind liking, sharing, subscribing to the newsletter, giving a review, giving comments, following the show either on Apple or Spotify, following and subscribing on YouTube. If there's somebody in your life who you think would like this show, please give it a share. And that is the best way, the easiest way to support a brand new business. So thank you so much. And now let's dive into AI policy news. We have two big topics related to the AI policy news. One is that OpenAI has released the AI in America economic blueprint. This blueprint that they have launched is a framework for thinking about policy in America as AI continues to grow. OpenAI is a US company. They benefit from being part of the US economy. And even though OpenAI is obviously global and available to people all around the world, their interests are in America. So they benefit from the way, and they will be directly impacted by the way America chooses to go about policy in the next couple of years. I recommend reading the blueprint. It's 15 pages. It's an easy read. It shouldn't take too long. There's a lot of charts and graphs and things like that. But here are some bold claims that they made. One is that AI is too powerful a technology to be led and shaped by autocrats, but that is a growing risk we face, while the economic opportunity AI presents is too compelling to forfeit. So their blueprint has some policy recommendations in it, and they call for expanding AI infrastructure, creating jobs, and establishing national regulations, which is something I didn't expect coming out of OpenAI. I actually expected that they would go with the don't regulate vibe, but they are calling for national regulations. And so the document warns that failing to act could cost the United States its competitive edge, specifically to China. Now, what they're calling for in their framework is what they call common sense rules of the road for AI that will protect humanity but will allow innovation to continue apace. And this includes, among other things, a free market for AI, freedom for developers to use AI as they see fit in exchange for following clear standards that help keep AI safe. So OpenAI is asking the United States government to put forth clear standards for what the responsible building and deployment of AI would look like. And in exchange, AI developers could use any AI tools that they want. And I don't know what the requirements of this would be. I don't know if that means that if I'm working for GitHub and I'm building AI, that I could use any AI I want to, whether GitHub says it's allowed or not. I don't know what the parameters of that would be or what the reach of the government could be in mandating that for large companies. But this is just what it says in there, right? And then preventing government use of AI tools to amass power and control citizens or to threaten and coerce states. They also give practical recommendations for policy, including policy solutions that prevent the creation and distribution of AI-generated child sexual abuse or exploitation materials. I think that is a policy that we can all get behind. They recommended incorporating CSAM and CSEM protections through the AI dev lifecycle, and then applying provenance data to all AI-generated audio-visual content. So if it's a picture or if it's a video or whatever it is, that there would be some kind of watermark, digital watermark in there, and that people would be able to find out and know where that originated from, so that if something is created with, for example, OpenAI's technology and it was nefarious, that they would be able to track that back and get an understanding for who actually created that material. Now, they also said that they think the US should share national security information with US AI companies conducting research. That felt like a massive ask from OpenAI, that they would say, you are the United States government, you have all this national security information, why don't you just hand it over to the AI companies so that we can do research and take a look at the kinds of adversarial attacks that you are navigating. I understand why they would say that's important. The reason why that gives me pause is this. OpenAI and other large companies are not voluntarily providing access to their models so that third-party research institutions can conduct safety tests. So that, for me, is like, if the United States is going to give you their national security stuff, you should also be participating in the research economy in a way that it doesn't just stop with you. Research institutions should have access to your technology to be able to conduct safety research. And so that was a big one for me that I wasn't loving. I want to give a shout out to Chris Lahan, who's the VP of Global Affairs at OpenAI, and the team that worked on this. I think this blueprint goes crazy. They did an incredible job with outlining things in a way that people can really understand. With the exception of their national security request, I don't think that what they are proposing is out of the question or outlandish or unattainable. I think that it's all very reasonable. One quote that was in the blueprint that I do not necessarily agree with, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it and really examine it. And so I would invite you to think with me on this quote. AI will help our children do things we can't. Not far off is the future in which everyone's lives can be better than anyone's life is now. So they're saying that in the future, with artificial intelligence, everyone's life, period, can be better, period, than anyone's life now. So even if you are, quote, living your best life, put that in the future of AI and it'll be better. It's interesting. They're painting with a really broad brush, and I'm not sure it holds water for me. I'd be interested to hear your perspective. And finally, in AI policy, I wanted to give some perspectives and some thoughts on what we might expect from President Trump's second term in office and from the Trump administration in general. So just to give a little bit of a review, his first term in office, he had some AI achievements and priorities. He established the American AI Initiative via an executive order, and it had 5 key goals: increasing AI research investment, provisioning federal AI computing and data resources, very important, setting technical standards for AI, building an AI workforce. Not 100% sure on if that means a workforce of AI or a workforce that uses AI. And then engaging international allies on AI. That was in 2019. So this is a couple years before ChatGPT was made available to the masses. The initiative also created the National AI Research Institutes. There are 25 of them in the United States, and it introduced some regulatory guidance. But there were definitely some questions about the investment. The original investment in these 25 research institutions was $20 million. And I think for a lot of people, they might say, hey, $20 million, that's a good amount of money. But just for context, it costs $4.6 million to train GPT-3. And it's rumored to have cost $63 million to train GPT-4. This is not including the actual salaries of the people who are doing the researching and the engineering. So in Donald Trump's initial AI executive order talking about AI, I think it was a good start, right? But the funding wasn't really there. And I think that if he's going to come in and he's going to make some changes in this next term and try to capitalize on what's happening in the world of AI, then he needs to be making sure that he's got the dollars to be able to back that up, and especially for research. Now, Donald Trump has signaled policy changes in his second term. He's expressed a desire to repeal Biden's 2023 AI executive order, which he claims, quote, imposes radical left-wing ideas on development of this technology. And so it's hard to say exactly what he's referring to, but it's likely that he's referring to the requirement that federal agencies only use AI systems that have undergone rigorous testing to address algorithmic bias and discrimination. So the testing can definitely slow down the process of using and deploying and benefiting from artificial intelligence. I would say that it is important testing and that it is important for safety, especially when it's a technology that you're using on or for or be on behalf of or around or near the American people. But there is no doubt that those testing processes and the requirements of having to be so selective about which AI you use, that can slow things down, especially if, you want to use a specific AI that's new or novel. It could be really beneficial, but they haven't gone through that rigorous testing. And so I think that's one of the main reasons why he wants to repeal the Biden administration AI executive order, and feels like it's slowing things down, especially for the federal government. And it's putting limits on commercial AI players in terms of what type of AI they can provide, because they have to meet all of these safety standards. They said, quote, we will rescind regulations that hinder AI innovation. And it'll be interesting to see what they think has hindered innovation. There's also been some signaling from the Trump administration that they're going to emphasize national security and that they're going to focus on expanded AI export restrictions with specific controls on Chinese companies' access to U.S. cloud computing resources and foundational AI model weights. This isn't too far off from what President Biden has done in limiting access that foreign nations have to U.S. AI technology, one of them being the AI Diffusion Network, which I'm going to talk about in a minute in the research corner. Now, the Trump administration plans to prioritize deregulation. We think that they're going to focus on private sector growth in AI. There could be some exacerbation of these risks, right? Deregulation could drive innovation, certainly, but it might exacerbate risks and algorithmic bias and safety, which is why I think that taking into account some of the suggestions that have come from OpenAI, that have come from Microsoft, that are coming from other large tech companies could really benefit, and sort of supplement where the Biden administration's AI executive order, if it is repealed, could leave some sort of gap in safety there. But there are other ways to be able to address that safety. So hopefully we will see something like that. These next 4 years will have a huge impact on how the U.S. fits into the AI narrative in the history books, but it is definitely a tightrope. And so hopefully the administration is going to take safety as seriously as they're taking innovation and AI global leadership. All right, let's move into the research corner here. Every week in my newsletter, I like to put some research out there. One that I want to talk about is a generative AI model for inorganic materials. This is a study that has come from Microsoft Research and their AI for Science team. It's been published in Nature, so this is accessible to you. You can go take a look at it. Hey, I like to tell people, I want to make sure that you know anytime I reference Microsoft that I work for GitHub, which is owned by Microsoft. So the model that they've created is called MatterGen, and this is a diffusion-based generative AI model that can design stable, diverse inorganic materials across the periodic table, outperforming prior methods in creating novel, stable, and unique materials tailored to specific property constraints. So to demensa that reference, the model works with knowledge and information about the periodic table to understand if new materials can be discovered. And they've been training this model on data sets of known materials, and then the model learns the patterns connecting material structures to properties like stability or conductivity or durability. So somebody would say, I want to create a material that is durable. And so the model would have prior knowledge and information about what elements are necessary to create something that is durable. So there was a significant milestone because the researchers were able to synthesize a material designed by MatterGen, and that proves that the model is stable and that it is confirming predicted properties. This is really helpful for a variety of reasons. I tried to look up some use cases for this. One is that it could expedite the discovery of next generation solid state electrolytes for longer lasting batteries, which could be really helpful in renewable energy, or it could be really helpful for things like electric vehicles. So that is that. The second thing I want to talk about is understanding the artificial intelligence diffusion framework. So this paper provides an analysis of the US framework for artificial intelligence diffusion. The framework was introduced in 2025. It was introduced last week, and it's meant to manage how advanced AI technologies are spread globally. It's specifically meant to keep foreign adversaries from getting access to US AI technology, specifically AI chips, which are used for computation, and AI model weights, the parameters that enable the AI systems. And this is meant to keep these from getting into the hands of foreign adversaries and allowing them to be able to advance in AI using US technology. So there are a couple things you should know about this framework. The first one is that it uses export controls to achieve three main things. Number one, maintain US leadership in AI technology. Number two, to minimize security risks associated with advanced AI. And number three, to support the controlled sharing of beneficial AI technologies worldwide. So the United States is saying, hey, we have created this AI technology on our shores, and we don't want to share this out to our foreign adversaries in a way that could allow them to benefit from it and advance beyond us in AI growth and AI dominance, and then kind of leave us sort of sitting in the background here. So this is all meant to control how US AI technology makes its way out into the world. So you might be asking, weren't there already limits on this? Yes, but they were finding that foreign adversaries like China were able to get access to these AI chips by just going to a different country. Instead of going to the United States and saying, hey, I'd like 5 chips, please, they could go to another country that had a surplus and they would buy it from another country. Now, the policy isn't just written to address China and Russia. It actually impacts everybody in the world who wants to do business with the United States, and it categorizes them in 3 tiers. One are trusted allies like NATO members and semiconductor partners like Japan and Taiwan. And these countries that are in tier 1 have unrestricted access to AI technology from the US. The second tier is where most countries fall, and that's folks who can only access the technology through licensing and safeguards. And then the third one is that it includes adversaries like China and Russia, and these nations have the strictest controls with either limited or no access to advanced AI. Now, the tier 2 countries, which is where most of the countries sit, they have to meet really stringent cybersecurity and physical security standards to get access to the AI technology. So here's how this works. It encourages the US-based cloud providers like Amazon and Google and Microsoft to lead global AI diffusion. So this puts the onus on the cloud providers to say, you have to meet these requirements in order to get access to this technology. And the companies are granted broad authorizations to deploy the AI infrastructure in tier 2 countries, but only under the specific conditions and if those specific conditions are met. So if I'm a country and I want access to Microsoft or Google's AI chips or AI infrastructure, I have to meet certain requirements, and Microsoft and Google and Amazon have to make sure that I've met those certain requirements before they can provide the technology. And so this minimizes the ability for foreign adversaries to actually get access to the technology through other countries. And it positions the US technology as the preferred choice globally, which reduces reliance on alternative ecosystems like China's. Now, this is where the framework falls short, according to this paper. It's too stiff with its country categories, and the way that the countries are grouped feels inflexible and might not keep up with the changing relationships and new alliances. This is also a huge lift on the companies who have to make sure that any country they're doing business with who falls in tier 2, which again is where we said most of the countries fall, that they have to make sure that all of these countries are meeting these very specific requirements. And so that puts a lot of weight on those companies as well, which could slow things down in terms of innovation in the US for those companies. The paper also says that the rules around the model weights don't seem to add much value right now and could just be complicated. So maybe the chips were a problem, but the model weights really weren't. And they feel like this could have just been focused on the chips. And then inconsistent security standards. It pushes for strong protections abroad, but doesn't focus enough on securing data centers in the US. In terms of what this gets right, the researcher feels that this is the first real effort to tackle how AI spreads globally and bringing security and diplomacy and leadership into one plan. And then it also acknowledges that it's tough balancing between security and innovation and maintaining relationships with allies. But ultimately, the researcher finds that it's a solid starting point for the US to use its tech leadership strategically and grow its advantage across the AI world. One thing that also came up as I was doing research for this is that folks felt like this may actually backfire on the United States. So if they make it too complicated for those middle tier countries to get access to the AI chips, those countries could just go to other countries and say, we don't want an NVIDIA chip. We don't want a Microsoft chip. We don't want an Amazon chip. We want to go to this other country, and we might as well get something that is similar or performs, 75% as well as these other ones, and we'll give them our dollars and we'll go ahead and use their chips because it's less complicated for us to get access to it. That is another way that this could backfire. It'll be interesting to see if the Trump administration maintains this framework and continues to keep this. This is something that just came out last week. So, the Trump administration could come and undo that and do an about face, or they could just make amendments to it. So it'll be interesting, and we'll be keeping a really close eye on that. That is all we have for you today. I want to say thank you so much for joining the Just AI podcast and for being with us today. Thank you for liking, supporting, sharing, giving reviews. If you have any questions or concerns or things that you want me to address, you can email hello@justaimedia.ai. And you can also go onto our website and see the email addresses on there as well. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and have a good week.